Go to sleep for 20 years. I came across this rather challenging quote. Most New Age philosophies and psychologies do not offer anything that resembles the path to liberation. They offer instead ways to be more comfortable in the dream of ego and teach us how to feel better within the illusion of our lives. What we need is education in how to pierce that dream. That's from a book called Halfway Up the Mountain by Mariana Kaplan. Whilst on retreat in Samyeling Monastery about 10 years ago, we were informed that we should try to be as quiet as we could when walking past a particular small wooden building. This was the home of a monk who had decided to live in isolation for the rest of his days. The brothers of Samyeling were supporting him with food and accommodation and silence, buckets full of silence. The next year and the year after that, we were issued with the same warning. Towards the end of that retreat, we were told that the brother had gone. When I asked where he'd gone, I was told, well, we don't really know. He left in the middle of the night with his backpack and walked off over the hills. The next day, they heard that he was in Blackpool and he wouldn't be coming back. Can you imagine the assault on the senses? To spend years in isolation in the Scottish lowlands and then yomp all the way to Blackpool. I imagine Blackpool as a concept represented a way for him to break every vow of anything he'd ever taken and be able to do it in all under 24 hours. I had this image of him in a saffron robe with a large glass of whiskey and a cigar, sitting in a gaudy strip bar with a semi-naked lady draped over him, twiddling his prayer beads between her bright red nails. Probably says more about me than him, that image. Look, does God really want me to live on a mountain top and withdraw from the world? Or would God rather I spend my time in a titty bar? What a conundrum. I feel that just as we have day followed by night, hot versus cold, we also have male and female. We're meant to be together. The reproductive system drives us to couple. The families keep us together, supporting one another. We don't just mate and split, generally. We stay and we support. It feels like a misunderstanding to huddle in single-sex groups. The misunderstanding comes from the division of God and man. The Christian and Islamic faiths have a clear division between man and God. He's out there. When you die, you'll go to him. It's a pretty flat-line system. Born, die, heaven, hell, depending on how much time you spent in Blackpool. Other faiths have a more circular idea. You get quite a few goes at life. Eventually, when you have lived your perfect life, you might move up a level to be able to chill with God for a while. As the quote at the top of the story suggests, I do not agree with the idea that we should abstract ourselves from society. It all hangs on the definition of God. If you believe that he's a father figure who should be served, then it all makes some sort of sense. If you believe, as I do, that we are all pure consciousness, then it's a pointless waste of life. Consciousness cares not if you live on a mountain or you decide to throw yourself off that mountain. Consciousness experiences consciousness through us. Space-time is two-dimensional, but if we curve space-time, it gives us a three-dimensional representation of this life. Consciousness is oft likened to a mirror, but I feel that in order for consciousness to experience anything, the mirror needs to curve and eventually reflect itself. Finally, then two dimensions can seem like the three dimensions we experience in this game of life that we play. The story of God and that we have in this game of life is that God does this and he does that God is powerful, angry, kind, punishing, as we allow ourselves to be buffeted through the game. We never understand that we are God. We rarely, if ever, awaken inside of the game, let alone step out of the game and see it for what it really is. A writer I really admire, Jed McKenna, says we're all still children. Few of us wake up to be adults. He sees adults as being awake in the game, i.e. the understanding that this is a game and that most of it is nonsense. Most of us live our lives just like the films and soap operas that we love to watch, lurching from disaster to chaos, from the next drug to the next drink, and then finally die, having learned nothing. Some become adults. They're aware there's more to life than meets the eye. It's few and far between that will escape the game and find a direct experience of consciousness and understand their own Godhead. All of which is fine by consciousness. Nothing matters except the fact that we continue to continue. The information that we experience and donate to our ever-expanding cloud of information, that is the container of our universe, expands on, fulfilling consciousness's path. I met a lovely young man who's decided to give his life to religion. Why not? It's not important. In the consciousness expanding game, nothing matters, except that we do continue to do. However, in the game itself, it's sad to see one of the players pull themselves out of the running. It must seem like a really comforting thing to do. Being a young man these days is a really tricky prospect. I was discussing suicide amongst young men with a couple of young guys the other day. The social media pressure, the advertising, the pressure this has put upon their lives is astonishing. No wonder the disillusioned are beginning to seek the refuge of self-isolation as a monk, where their hearts will never be hurt again, or the big exit door to stop the pain. In my day, a young man turned to alcohol, cigarettes, and baseless sex. All of these short-term fixes seem to be going out of fashion now too. Maybe my lovely acquaintance will spend 20 years asleep, and then wake up one day and backpack to Blackpool. I can only hope that whilst he's asleep, he has the most wonderful dreams. The odd thing about enlightenment seems that you can't make it happen. We just have to look at how many enlightened beings there are in our world. I think that silence will give you a good chance. I also think it's quite easy to think you're enlightened, and also to be encouraged to believe it to be so by the system you're in, when the truth is that you're just having lovely hallucinations. It would seem that you're just as likely to discover enlightenment at a bus stop in Paris one rainy afternoon as the author Susan Segal did. A practice is good to create fertile ground, but lock yourself away, I think you've missed the point. You've been given the best and most complex game in the universe, and you then decide to try to play it with your eyes shut and one hand behind your back. Wake up now. My young friend told me the story of Krishna from the Vedas. It's a lovely story and I've read it. I think it's just that, a story. It's a little like me saying, I found an ancient text by Geoffrey Chaucer from 1,000 years ago and have decided to start a rather bawdy religion from it, which will be based in Blackpool. Stories are only there to teach us ways of being, not to be the be-all and end-all. The Upanishads, which are also part of the Vedic scriptures, state, you are God, and don't you forget it. Unfortunately, we all need something to hang our hats on. It seems such a difficult task to realise that we are God. It's easier to follow somebody else. Like the good little sheep that we are, there's always a shepherd round the corner. That is the essence of life in a nutshell. Learn how to do it yourself. Don't follow some other bloke, no matter how good his songs are, no matter what amazing story he has to tell you, and no matter what colour his robes are. You are just as likely to discover your true self in Blackpool as at the top of Mount Shasta. Love, 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 and mountains of joy to you. Hao La, which is Chinese for everything is good already.